All right, everyone. Steve Metrics here of Db8 Sports with your boy. Steve Metrics here of Db8 Sports with your boy. And we are here going over what is going on in the AFC South and the AFC North AFC East. We're doing the AFC East and the AFC South for today's show. Here with your boy DJ Triggs, and let me get him here. And here we go. We got our guys. Boom. There he is. We got kind of lost in the matrix for a bit, but that's your boy DJ. Yep. There he is. There's DJ Triggs. Hey, how about it, Triggs? We are covering the AFC North and the AFC South for today's show for fantasy. Which division and which team you think we should hit up first? You there, Triggs? All right. So I am going to check out where we're going, what team we're thinking of picking here. So I'm going to start up north, and let's go in the AFC North. Looking at the Baltimore Ravens for fantasy. What do you see with this team, Triggs?
All right, let's go north.
Okay. All right.
And let's do Pittsburgh.
Okay. So let's go with the Pittsburgh Steelers here. So this is a team that definitely for fantasy, especially at the quarterback position, there's a little bit of uncertainty. Which one do you go with? Do you go with Russell Wilson or do you go with Justin Fields? They definitely got some things going on at the running back position. And the receiving core is interesting. We know they got some good tight ends there, actually. And then, I don't know if you heard this, Triggs, but I caught wind today that this team is actually, as we speak, is actively working a deal to try to land Brandon Ayuk.
I did hear that. Man, with him and Pickens, that would be insane.
Yeah, I think that would definitely be the way to go. I think teams would definitely have a tough time figuring out which one's the true number one. Honestly, if I really had to really figure who's going to have the greater career, I would actually go George Pickens. I think the catches that guy makes is absolutely insane. Brandon Ayuk is a solid player. I give him that. But to me, I think he's one of the best number 2 wide receivers in the NFL. However, at this point, if that were to develop, I think Ayuk would be regarded as the number 1 by opposing defenses outside. And then Pickens would be that number 2 outside. But to me, Pickens can just absolutely ball out. So that's kind of what I like there. He's going at around the 56th position. So he's looking at you would probably be able to acquire him in round 6. So that's kind of what I'm seeing there from the receiver slot.
Yeah, I guess so. That I like Quez Watkins.
Oh yes,
that might be my sneaky. Maybe I'll grab this dude in the last round of the draft. Out of Southern Miss. I think he's really talented.
Yeah, he is.
I don't really know where he's gonna fit, but with Van Jefferson out there, he and Pickens, I think he'll be okay.
Yeah, I think they really got some guys going on there. This team is actually kind of loaded with kind of not so well-known receivers, but Quez Watkins on Philly, I ran him a few times over the last few seasons. He is a dart. He is just a flat-out speed demon. Obviously, you can get him whenever you would like. So that's pretty cool. This team has Scotty Miller. He's kind of one of those slot shifty running go route kind of guys. We saw him in Atlanta. We saw him in Tampa Bay. Pretty cool with the stuff they do there. They got the tall guy Van Jefferson. He's been pretty solid over the years with the LA Rams.
Yeah.
But you can tell this team is totally just salivating to land another receiver. It looks like their other guy that they actually had ready to go in the slot, Roman Wilson, is a little banged up. So this team is in a position where they absolutely need a wide receiver ASAP. So with that being the case, I think this is a team that would start to want to rely early on the run game. And in a way, too, if that's the case, this could be a team then that if out of the gate, if that's what they have to go with, this team might go to Justin Fields real early.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I'm not a big fan, but maybe.
Yeah, I mean, just a guy who can just totally ball out. I mean, I know Russell Wilson had some solid production last season with Denver. Granted, there was turmoil between him and Sean Payton, but the way of seeing how Russell Wilson orchestrated the offense with what he had to work with in Denver was very impressive. But when it comes to a game where a guy can just take off and do things with his legs and make things happen on the field, and now has a really, really good play caller in Arthur Smith, I like Justin Fields. It is ironic, actually, looking at their ADP on a sleeper. Both of these guys are being drafted like literally right next to each other. 206, 209. You're talking, you can get these guys pretty much whenever. So that's pretty wild stuff there. Yeah, absolutely, Brett. You got that pretty right with Steelers talk going on here. So, yeah, let's weld. I like it. Yeah, that's probably what Russell Wilson would say. That has to be it. Yeah, I like it, man. I really like it. But yeah, this team is interesting, very interesting on offense. Interesting in the tight end position. I mean, I think Freiermuth is a solid pick on this team if you have to go with him. If I'm looking at Freiermuth, he's going in about the 13th round. It's pretty solid. Granted, this team does have what's his name? Hayward's brother plays tight end on this team as well. But I would also like to see Darnell Washington start to show up in this offense. I mean, fantasy-wise, I think it's kind of a wait and see. But the size of Darnell Washington, the way he can produce in the run game one day, to me, is absolutely going to happen. And with this team having Najee, between Najee and blanking on the other guy, Jaylen Warren, I think that team definitely needs to go 12 personnel a little more often than you would think. So that's kind of what I see going on with Pittsburgh. Also, that defense to me is top notch.
And I love Darnell Washington, 6'7",
Totally.
270 out of Georgia, the tight end.
Yes, absolutely. To me, that guy is just a monster.
Wish you'd get more targets, but
Yep, absolutely. And plus, too, I mean, right now we're looking, Sleeper has the Steelers actually ranked as the 5th best defense overall in the National Football League. Another thing, too, is their kicker, too. If you want to pair a kicker and a defense together, pretty much more often than not, that kicker of the Steelers is one of the better ones, too. So you got some really cool things across the board that you can look at with the Steelers on this team. So there you go. That's one team down in the AFC North. Looking pretty good here. Where we're going next, DJ Triggs?
I'm gonna say Cleveland, just because it's Cleveland.
Sure. Yeah, Cleveland is a very interesting team. I think. What do you think about them, Triggs?
So this is the big thing for me with Cleveland. So Deshaun Watson, has all that money, right? Guaranteed, most ever, yada, yada.
Yep.
But he hasn't really hit that stride. Last year, Joe Flacco took them to the playoffs and everyone lost their mind.
Yeah, he
Well,
was
guess
better.
what? They have Jameis Winston, Tyler Huntley, Pro Bowl,
That's a guy.
and your boy DTR.
I love Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Absolutely love that guy.
Like, what happened there?
I think this team and the Falcons are the two teams who have grossly overpaid for a quarterback to the fact that it is actually causing detriment to the team. I think Cleveland had some really good stuff going on with the other quarterbacks who we've seen walk through those doors recently, and even two of those players are not even on the team anymore. Jacoby Brissett is no longer on the team, and Joe Flacco is no longer on the team either. So I think this team is realizing they screwed up on Deshaun Watson. He has a boatload of bad karma with him. But on top of that, I still go back to even his early years when he was a rookie and he was crushing it with the Texans. But ever since he tore his ACL, something about his mechanics, the way he plays, something about him is not right. And he's definitely had other injuries since aggravating that ACL. To me, it's just been a downward spiral in the worst kind of way. Yeah, he's set up for life with money, but this is a guy that could have had a remarkable career, and he threw it all away.
Wow. Threw it all away.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, I guess so. That's a interesting way to put it.
Yeah.
What about Jerry Jeudy and Amari Cooper and those guys?
Yeah, Amari Cooper has always been one that I really like on this team. I felt like when he was with the Raiders, he just truly never developed into the wide receiver that people were expecting. He had the talent, he had the measurables, but he wasn't catching passes. He had games where he would just go totally obsolete. Granted, at times when he was on Dallas, he kind of did the same thing, but he was improving as a Cowboy. I definitely saw him doing that down there. And then seeing him get to Cleveland, he's pretty much gotten really, really good, and he's pretty much never let off the gas ever since. So this is a guy that in your 10-team leagues, you can get him at the end of round 6. This is a guy that's projected to score a touchdown in just about every other game. He is one of those guys who can score more at home than he does on the road, but honestly, this guy's got some really, really good production. And not only that, this is a team that's really going to have to figure out the run game. Nick Chubb is coming back from his ACL. Jerome Ford is a guy who kind of gets a little banged up too. But I do like seeing Jerry Jeudy there. I think that guy is a absolute bona fide wide receiver. He may, man, it's really weird. I think this is one of those teams that kind of has a 1A and a 1B on the receiving core. Granted, teams are going to cover Amari Cooper, but Jerry Jeudy might be one of those really, really good number 2 wide receivers on a football team that you could kind of feel confident with, to be honest. I mean, in Denver, in some of his early years, he had some really, really good games where he was almost the best player in the NFL on any given week a couple seasons ago. So I think Jerry Jeudy is in a really nice spot on this team. This team is incredibly well coached. You got Elijah Moore in the slot. He's already kind of banged up. But this is a team that has some very interesting pieces on offense. You may want to play with the running backs, but the cool thing too is you could to me, this is the team that running back core is kind of like the Miami Dolphins last year, right? Where you could get Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane in basically round 8 or 9 or later. If you're looking at Nick Chubb and Jerome Ford, and Nick Chubb was a round 1 pick last season. He is straight up round 1. Since the ACL tear, he has drastically dropped, like overdropped. We're talking now he's going basically at the beginning of round 10, and Jerome Ford is in the beginning of round 13. So you could get two monster running backs way late in your draft. And if you want to handcuff them, run them both out there. But Nick Chubb is a monster athlete. And you have Jerome Ford who can play just as well.
Right. That's a steal to me. Like if I can get Nick Chubb, and I mean I might even pull the trigger early and go like
Yes.
7 or 8 at that point.
Yes. And that's still a deal.
Right, because you're already going to have your quarterback set by that point, maybe 2 running backs, a couple wide receivers. You might even find your tight end before then. And now you're just kind of looking for depth. Man, you got Nick Chubb on your bench, and he maybe goes off by week 8. He starts feeling the burn, and he's ready to go. Now you got a guy you can just throw in your flex and set.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is probably you could really make the case that we're talking like middle of a draft. That might be the best player in the entire NFL. He is starting on the physical unable to perform list. Mm-hmm. Does that mean he's actually going to miss time at the start of the season? That's something I gotta see here.
I mean, I assume that anyway. And if he's not going to miss the beginning of the season, he's going to be a little like banged up, a little sore, a little, he's not going to be Nick Chubb like. And like I said, that's why if you hold on to him, you put him on your bench and you run him, by week 8 when you're starting to push for the playoffs and now he's starting to go.
Right.
You got to steal.
That's true. Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I mean, if he's not playing, then Jerome Ford is definitely there as well. We know this is a team too that they ran a little bit with that other running back. I'm blanking on his name. I forgot his name. He was a small, shifty guy, kind of Aaron Jones-ish. I take it he is no longer on the team. But Jerome Ford is definitely the guy. They have 3 other well-known running backs. They are all banged up between Chubb, former Bears running back Deontay Foreman is there, and really unfortunate jet ski situation. But he was just a rocket launcher running back. Naheem Hines is on that team as well. So yeah, you got some really cool backs, a little bit different styles, but very, very downhill running between all 4 of them. But you can definitely get a Nick Chubb and a healthy Jerome Ford to begin your season. Just incredible bargains, I think, with both those backs.
Right. And just before we pull off on them, I mean, David Njoku is not the worst tight end in the whole world to have.
I've always liked Njoku. Even coming out of Miami into the draft, I thought he was really solid.
Right. And he's going to give you, nearly 1,000 yards, a handful of touchdowns. I mean, you can't really go wrong with that. And then I think he had like 80 catches last year. 81 is what I'm saying.
Sure.
And can't go wrong with a tight end that's going to give you 80 catches, especially if you're in PPR.
Yeah, and on top of that, too, that's also impressive because that is a guy producing like that normally plays a lot of 12 personnel. It's a team looking at the slot position, looking at him, looking at another tight end. But honestly, I'm looking at this team, and just based off of what I'm seeing the other guys drafted at, this might not be as much 12 personnel as we think. There's a couple other guys who are kind of up here. I've always been very impressed with Jordan Akins, but I don't know exactly where he falls on this depth chart. So I'm with you, man. If you got to get David Njoku in round 9 or later, you can definitely run Njoku, and he's a great tight end.
Yeah.
Cool.
So let's move along to Baltimore.
Yeah, Baltimore is one of those teams that people are greatly expecting big things from this year. What are you expecting from the Ravens, especially fantasy wise?
I'm almost to the point where I don't want to touch anyone on this team except maybe Lamar Jackson. Derrick Henry, Baltimore is really big on running, but I don't know how much I'm going to get out of Derrick Henry unless I can get him in a good place, like a 4th, 5th round. I mean, Derrick
Okay.
Henry used to be a number one no matter what.
Right.
I get burned with their wide receivers every year.
I
Not
got
going
burned.
there.
Yeah, I got burned a little bit with one of them, but it is the one that I would absolutely have above everyone else. He is a bit of a head case, and he completely unraveled in the playoffs. But seeing the talent that he plays with, the way he runs routes, the way he's just kind of all over the field, to me is somewhat Tyreek Hillish. I really honestly I do think the world of Zay Flowers.
I
I
knew it.
really do, man. I
I
think he's
knew it.
insane.
You,
Yep,
anyone named Zay and plays wide receiver is a Steve Metrics guy.
it is. Yeah, I've been a guy that loves Zay Flowers, Zay Jones. Yeah, those kind of guys are pretty cool. I'm kind of starting to feel the X this year. Guys named Xavier are pretty cool. Even one plays defense for your Green Bay Packers is actually really special too. So yeah, I might be going from the Z to the X, but yeah, Zay Flowers is pretty dope. He is a slot receiver, so he gets those really cool slot matchups. To me, he's almost like the CeeDee Lamb of the AFC, where he doesn't have really much wide receiver talent outside of him, and he plays the slot, and he's incredibly young. I think he's really, really good. I mean, for a guy that's going around the 50 spot, so you're basically talking beginning of round 6, end of round 5. I think Zay Flowers is insane if you're looking at a 10-team league. I really think the guy's fantastic. He's one of those guys that when he has his games, he's going to have some pretty big games.
Now, a player that's really catching my eye, and I mean, if we're talking just 2 years ago,
Yep.
he would have been one of the best tight ends, or 3 years ago, one
Sure.
of the best tight ends in the game, 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns, was Mark Andrews. But
Yes.
the injury got him last year. I think he
It
only
did.
played like 10 games.
Yep.
That's kind of one of those guys where if he falls low enough, I might scoop him just because past tense makes them kind of good. They play a lot of 12 personnel with Isaiah Likely over there. Like,
Totally.
who knows?
Yeah.
That literally might be the only guy I would touch by far.
Yeah. Honestly, I like both those guys. I do feel that when it comes to the quarterback position, you can do a little bit better than Lamar Jackson. So I don't like. I think to me he looks a little expensive for where he's at. But a guy like Isaiah Likely, if you get Mark Andrews, you have an open position on your bench. It's really a good idea to actually pair those two together. I actually ran with Isaiah Likely last year. I did not draft Mark Andrews, but I snagged Likely off the waiver wire, and Likely was insane. So, and like that's the thing too is like Lamar Jackson has nobody tall to throw to. Between him and Josh Allen, they can't get those guys tall receivers at all. I mean, things are changing now for Josh Allen, but Lamar Jackson has no tall wide receivers. So having tall targets like Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely really matter to this offense.
Right. And I mean, the only positive I can really say about Baltimore is they were the number one rushing team last year, mostly
Okay.
because of Lamar Jackson. Like, I'm not really sold on them. Yeah, they're an awesome team. They're probably going to the playoffs again. Who knows how far they go? Um, but yeah, not touching them. Unless someone literally falls in my lap and I'm like, oh, okay, that
Yeah.
guy's still on the board, then I might
Right.
scoop you.
I do think though one of the craftier things you can manipulate towards the end of your draft. I mean, it might be a little earlier than you want to. You may. I mean, it is pretty bizarre of where these guys are ranked and how they go exactly. But if you are able to pull that string in your league, drafting the Ravens defense and Justin Tucker to kick is a
Yes.
pretty cool idea.
Yes.
That play I really, really like. This team is going to get into some grindy games. I mean, as good as Lamar Jackson is, as good as Zay Jones is, as good as Mark Andrews is, as good as Derrick Henry is, they're going to get real grindy. And plus, Justin Tucker playing in the North, they play outside. Incredibly impressive how well he kicks. You get some real gritty grindiness from this team. So getting the defense plus the kicker of the Ravens together is pretty cool.
Right. So I guess we move on to Cincinnati. Cincinnati is one of those that kind of like they did some moves where you kind of didn't know they did them. Zach Moss coming from Indy. He was kind of the guy that you'd pick up when Jonathan Taylor was, doing it. It's one of those situations where you're like, do I pick either of those guys? Cincinnati was the second worst rush offense in the NFL last year, and that's probably because Mixon wasn't mixing it up, for lack of a better way to put it.
Exactly.
And Joe Burrow was basically a half of a guy.
Yeah. So basically every team knew, and not only that, this team has still had a bad offensive line. It may actually be better this season finally, but pretty much this entire time for Joe Mixon's and Joe Burrow's career, that offensive line has been miserable. So I think finally this team is starting to turn the corner on that. I do like Zach Moss a lot, especially seeing him in Cincinnati where he can take the number one role. You can get both him and Chase Brown in a 10-team league, kind of like Cleveland. You can get them around rounds 10 and rounds 13. So that's pretty tempting. You could probably even get Chase Brown a little bit later, considering he is not really that well known of a player. But yeah, it's pretty wild to see how these guys are going. Yeah, obviously Jamar Chase is one of the highest picked guys in all of fantasy. I don't know how you feel about him, but I do not like the value of him. And ironically, his other LSU former teammate, Justin Jefferson, I also don't like. I think the value on these guys is way too high. And to me, they have way too much injury stuff in their past that I don't like.
Right. Yeah, I'm not sure if I would touch him just because of the whole Joe Burrow thing. I don't know how healthy he's going to be, or if he's going to be a better player than he was last year. Yeah, and until Zach Moss shows me something big, I mean, I might get him if I can get him at a high value that no one's really paying attention to.
Right.
But I don't know. This is another one of those teams I might not touch.
Yeah, to me, this is clearly the worst team in the AFC North by a mile. And I just really don't think there's really anything good coming out of this team for this season. I think there's too many question marks, too much inconsistency. Maybe the one guy that you could really get a little bit of value off of is T. Higgins, because we've seen T. Higgins without Jamar Chase. We've seen T. Higgins without Joe Burrow. He can ball out. He can play. In my eyes, he is the true number one wide receiver on this team that I would feel comfortable riding with for an entire season.
Yeah, I mean, and he's probably at good value too. He could get you 1,000 yards, handful of touchdowns. It's a solid pickup if you can get him later. Like you said, Jamar Chase probably going too high for anybody.
Yeah.
But who knows?
Yeah. One other name that I'm recognizing here that seems kind of interesting. There is a little bit of an injury concern going on. What it is, I don't know exactly. But the tight end Mike Gesicki is on this team. I think that's kind of interesting. I think Mike is a really, really good tight end that had kind of an odd situation with the Miami Dolphins and definitely an odd situation up in New England. I think Gesicki with the Cincinnati Bengals is actually a really, really good spot.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I do too. It's just weird to see him there because I did not hear anything about him going there.
Yeah, I didn't hear anything about that news, about that transition to the Bengals. But to me, I mean, I would think that if this offense does what it should, what we expect that offense to look like, which we expect it to be a good offense, I would expect Mike Gesicki to do well. If he doesn't, then you can easily drop him. But the cool thing with Mike is that you can draft him. His ADP is right in the early 200s. So he should be available in any size league that you draft.
Yeah, and why not?
Exactly.
Like, you're
Yeah,
the
with a guy
starting
that
tight
good,
end on a
totally.
team that throws the ball a million times. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see by season's end if things go well health wise and offensively, I could see Gesicki possibly showing up in the top 10 for tight ends because of that.
You know why? Because great transition. One of their we're going to the AFC South, right?
We
That's where
are.
we're.
Yes.
One of their
Yep.
wide receivers is on an AFC South team now, the Tennessee Titans, Tyler Boyd. So, like,
Yep.
at one point, Cincinnati was looking at 3 wide receivers for 1,000 yards. Maybe Gesicki gets like 700 or 800 yards and 5 touchdowns, and
Yeah.
that's a steal. Like, that
That
guy's
is,
almost
yes.
undrafted.
Yes, almost undrafted. Yeah, that's totally the big thing that's going on there. That yeah, those targets should go to someone else as long as Joe Burrow is playing. I think that's an
Yeah.
excellent point right there.
So, to transition to the Titans.
Yep.
So, I just looked up the Titans depth chart, and
Yep.
like my mind is kind of like, what?
This
Okay,
team's
Will
better
Levis
than
was
people
like,
think.
he was your boy. Will Levis was your boy last year.
Yes.
They got Tony Pollard, right?
Yes. Yes, they do.
Calvin Ridley,
Yeah.
DeAndre Hopkins, Tyler Boyd. Like,
Yep.
what?
This team is actually loaded on offense.
Where did that come from?
A lot of guys signing there because they're like, sweet, no state income tax. Let's go. Tighten up. That's exactly
Sure.
what happened. Yeah.
I got a buddy that's a big Titans fan, and I might have to. Wow, they
They
might
got
take the
guys.
South. That's kind of weird.
It is rather bizarre how good this team is looking on the offensive side. Today they just signed. I want to say I think it was I forgot his first name, but his last name is Diggs. He is from the Seattle Seahawks. He's a safety there. So we know that secondary is actually starting to get locked down between him and we know former Kansas City Chief Ladarius Sneed is a corner for the Tennessee Titans now as well.
Wait, they have Jamal Adams, and it's Quandre Diggs.
Quandre Diggs.
But
Okay.
like Jamal Adams is there too.
Yeah, they got guys. They are loading up that team without telling anyone what's going on.
What? How come like there was none of the? I swear I didn't hear about any of this. Like,
Nope.
what is going on?
Yeah, the receivers, I want to say they all signed pretty much like within days of each other. Like I want to say Calvin Ridley, well, we know DeAndre Hopkins went there last year, but when Calvin Ridley went there, then I want to say Tyler Boyd followed suit shortly after. And then I want to say Ladarius Sneed came shortly after that. Even in the receiving core, they still have Traylon Burks, who has some nice measurables, hasn't really shown up to the level that they expected from him for drafting him. I think he was a second or a third round pick. But this team has guys. And here's the thing that I like about this team. I know a few weeks ago we were talking about the Carolina Panthers and how they've transitioned to an offensive-minded head coach. My concern with the Panthers is that that team could get very one-dimensional. They really have no run game. So they have some nice receivers, not Tennessee Titan nice, but they have some receivers, and they have a new offensive head coach in Dave Canales. The Titans now have an offensive-minded head coach. Mike Vrabel is gone. Ironically, too, I saw it on NFL Network the other day. Vrabel is actually coaching the defense in Cleveland. He is part of that defensive coaching staff there. So another reason to think highly about the Browns defense. But when I look at the Titans, not only do they have strong receivers, I like the running backs that they have there. I like Tajay Spears. I'm not going to ride with Tony Pollard because he burned me so hard last year as a Dallas Cowboy. But you can tell that they want to mix and match those guys. They want to keep both elements of the game moving. But clearly, you are going to have to defend the pass against this team from a team that has literally 4 legit wide receivers and a guy who can throw the football over the mountain alongside Uncle Rico. This team will air it out game after game after game. So I really, really like the makeup of this team. Like we said, we're seeing good things on defense. The offensive line is good. This is a really sneaky good team that is going to steal some wins from some teams this year.
And the crazy part about this, they attempted the second least amount of pass attempts last year. That number is definitely going through the roof.
Yeah, like I mean, I'm flat out. I am kicking him around. I am kicking around Will Levis, drafting Will Levis, flat out in fantasy. He is going ADP of 175 in any 10-team league. That means he is completely undrafted. I think the value you can get on this guy, I think this is a guy that definitely goes into next season being like, oh, people totally missed on him, and this guy is one of the top 16 quarterbacks of the NFL. Just seeing how this offense is just growing and evolving, the targets they have, the running backs they have. Tajay Spears is another guy, obviously from the University of Tulane. But Spears is he's getting some interesting looks too. This is a guy you can get at the end of round 11 in a 10-team league. To me, he's got a very Aaron Jones kind of Alvin Kamara style about him. I really like the look of Tajay Spears too. So I think him, Levis, maybe one of those wide receivers. I think you can get some really good value way late on this team.
Yeah, I might not draft a quarterback now that I know Will Levis is going to be there.
Exactly. Yeah, like Will Levis, he's going to be one of those later guys that we're talking Will Levis, Aaron Rodgers, Matthew Stafford, Kirk Cousins. Man, I feel like Baker Mayfield. Yeah, you can get all 5 of those guys as maybe like picks 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20 for quarterbacks in your league. That's deep. That is way deep for guys that I think are just incredibly too good to be being picked at those levels. To me, those guys should basically be around more of like 16 and above, maybe 12 to 16 is where probably all of those guys should fit.
Wow. I might go Aaron Rodgers Levis.
Yeah. It's a sneaky move. I mean, I've been hearing really good things about Rodgers in camp right now. NFL Network is actually at Jets camp. And to me, this is a team that just seen several players interviewed. I know we're not talking about actually, we are talking about the Jets next episode. But the Jets are keep an eye out on that team. That team is very grounded and well coached. And they got some good guys, like straight up down to earth good people on that team. So pretty cool stuff with the Jets. That's definitely a team to keep your eye on for sure.
So let's move to Jacksonville, just because I feel like Jacksonville is the most overrated offense in the NFL. Is that bad to say?
No, I think it's spot on. I think this is a team that, to me, I think is almost about ready to clean house. I think if I'm looking at this team on offense, I mean, I last year was a massive disappointment. I think Trevor Lawrence to this point has been a massive disappointment. When you To me, him and Lamar Jackson to me are very similar. These are two guys that you get them out of the pocket, they get very rattled. They both have really strong athleticism. They both run really well. But when you get them out of the pocket and things break down, both of them get really frazzled. There is no Zay Jones here anymore. There is no Calvin Ridley anymore. Pretty much the only guys that I would feel strong rolling with on this team would have to be Travis Etienne and Evan Ingram, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as Zay Jones was put off this team, I was like, I'm out.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
But like, it just blows my mind that Trevor Lawrence has as much money as like a Jordan Love, and it's like,
Right.
yo, at least Jordan Love beat a team in the playoffs and made it look spectacular. Trevor Lawrence has been around a handful of years, and nothing really has come from it.
No, to me, it's just been it's been too much of that Clemson hype that we were really hoping to see. Things really fell flat from Urban Meyer. Maybe Urban Meyer's regime did more damage than we really think. I mean, to me, I feel like Doug Peterson should have been able to figure him out by now. But man, I am just not seeing it on this team. I mean, Christian Kirk is a receiver that I have liked over the last few years. I haven't played with him all the time. And even then too, before he started to dominate the slot, I actually played with him as a number 2 outside receiver. Christian Kirk has been pretty cool like that. And Kirk is a guy that has actually been, to me, he's been undervalued. I remember people saying like, oh man, like week 1, like never play with this guy. Like he's a terrible wide receiver. Yeah, it turns out he was like their only receiver early in the season. So you got to be careful on that. But yeah, there's some weird question marks on this team. I have heard the defense is getting better though.
Ooh, I'm gonna draft their defense for sure.
Yeah. I don't know about that. I mean, to me, I just don't like I just don't like seeing a team to even draft on defense that I have really big question marks about. And yeah, just looking here, yeah, Jacksonville is pretty much end of the draft. So I would honestly, if you have to avoid all the players from this team, it's not a bad idea. Yeah, I just think you gotta go to another team from this division if you're looking at something from the AFC South. I just don't think Jacksonville is one of those teams that you really want to ride with.
Sorry, allergies are killing me right now.
Yeah, I got you, bud. I got you.
Indianapolis Colts.
So this is a team that I think is really, really interesting. I think the Colts, straight up at the top of the draft. I mean, I would be really curious to play with both Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson. The receivers on this team, like, man, I just don't know. I honestly don't know who these guys are. Like, I just haven't played with Michael Pittman or the rookie Adonai Mitchell, or Josh Downs is really good as well. This is a team that also has Alec Pierce. Last time I checked too, I gotta see if he's on this team. Is he on this team? Yeah, he's still on this team. Alec Pierce is actually really good. Shocking how far he's down on the depth chart. But yeah, this is a really good looking team that we know is going to really run the ball hard. Their defense is improving. But having a full season potentially of Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson could really change things up for this team. And this is a team that last year didn't have that and still only finished one game behind the Texans and was right there with them for the final playoff position of the AFC South.
Very true. Both of those guys could win you a league.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, you got to think about like, hey, if you want to like just guarantee rushing touchdowns, and plus there's no Zach Moss here too, so that opens up things as well. If you really want to look at how you're going to run that from the Indianapolis Colts, it is possible to lock down both Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson. So you can get Jonathan Taylor basically beginning of round 2. I think he's better than that. And you can get Anthony Richardson basically beginning of round 6 of a 10-team league. And between the two of them, they are projected for just under 20 total touchdowns. Combined, we are looking at 39 total touchdowns between the two of them.
Wow.
Yeah. So that is an insane amount between those guys. So yeah, if you can get Jonathan Taylor plus Anthony Richardson plus it's Shane Steichen, this is when the Eagles were flying at their best. This was Super Bowl borderline MVP Jalen Hurts, like Eagles going the distance, and now Shane Steichen has his pieces in place. If you have Jonathan Taylor plus Anthony Richardson, that is a lot of touchdowns you're looking at. You may not get the receiving touchdowns, but you can guarantee you're always getting those rushing touchdowns. Always.
Yeah, I mean, to have a quarterback that's going to run like Richardson, and then guess what? He's backed up by Joe Flacco. So at least it's a playoff run.
Exactly. Like, yeah, if you lose Richardson and then I got to pull the trigger and I got to go to Joe Flacco, it's not the worst thing in the world, because then I think the vision of this team shifts. So right now, out of the gates, obviously teams are going to load the box on Jonathan Taylor. They're going to force Anthony Richardson to throw. And from what I've heard from last season, and I've even heard a little bit of this season, it hasn't gone quite well throwing the ball. So this team is very run-oriented first. Maybe Shane Steichen can fix Richardson to throw it more reasonably. But this is a team right now that is still going to not get the respect of throwing the ball. And plus, again, like I said, I'm already not really that familiar with those 3 wideouts that they have. I know they're good, but I don't know which of those 3 is great. So that's how this team is going to be recognized by opposing defenses. I would just say, like, just be a little bit cautious of this team. But if you do have the possibility of acquiring both Jonathan Taylor and somehow the way the cards may fall and Anthony Richardson is a possibility for you to draft, I think combining both of them is actually pretty powerful.
Yeah, why not? Like you said, round 2 and round 6?
Yeah, you're talking round 2, round 6 in a 10-team draft.
Now, add, kind of a sideways sort of handcuff, picking up Will Levis undrafted or an Aaron Rodgers or a Matt Stafford. Now,
yes.
I mean, if he gets hurt, okay, at least you get it. But if he doesn't, again, he could win you a league.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you got some really strong things back there that you could get Richardson up high. And even too, like, it's not the worst value out there. So the fact that he's in round 6, you're still going to hit on the other 4 to 5 rounds, even outside of Jonathan Taylor. So you can combine some things, get those 2, get another late high-octane quarterback, even a Kirk Cousins, something like that. You can make things happen with that mix. Just looking at that volume of touchdowns, though, that's an insane volume of touchdowns to ignore. Like, if it falls in your place, those are 2 great guys to go with.
Right. So speaking of great guys to go with, let's move to Houston, where they, I mean, unlike when we were looking at Tennessee and we were like, oh man, they're star-studded and all this. This team basically told you, like, hey, we went out and got Joe Mixon. We went out and got Stephon Diggs. We got Dalton Schultz, Tank Dell, Nico Collins, CJ Stroud. We got everybody that you can think of. We even brought in Case Keenum. Just why not? Who cares?
Exactly.
But like,
Minnesota Miracle.
Like, yeah, they brought in everybody that you could like think of. And now it's almost one of those teams where I kind of set them to the side and go, okay, if someone falls to me, I'll maybe take a look at them. But there's not enough ball to go around. They were a top 10 passing offense, but they rushed for less than 100 yards a game. But now you have Joe Mixon backed up by Dameon Pierce, and you're like, okay, we got to run it a little bit. And, my WNBA is going to show real quick. Enrique Agumbawale's boy is out there, like we got another Agumbawale. You know what I'm saying?
That's true. That is absolutely true with what's going on this team. I just look at this team and right out of the gates, I could never ever pick Nico Collins ahead of Stephon Diggs. I mean, I know I got my gripe with Stephon Diggs and his personality, and I mean he's been on two teams with really good quarterback play and he can't make it work. That is definitely concerning to me. But honestly, like, do not draft Nico Collins ahead of Stephon Diggs. I don't see that. Tank Dell is very, very talented too. He's coming off a brutal injury. But honestly, like, if I can see where, like, the fourth quarterback, like CJ Stroud, falls, I mean, this is where, like, you got to make the call. Do you go Anthony Richardson or do you go CJ Stroud? To me, I go CJ Stroud. You bring up a great point about running the ball. However, already Joe Mixon is not practicing with this team. They are playing more Dameon Pierce. I still expect more of the same. I heard today that basically CJ Stroud like balled out to both Stephon Diggs and Robert Woods is on this team as well. I think CJ Stroud is not going to miss a beat. He might have a little bit of a hookup because, to be honest, he really didn't regress at all over the course of last season. It was pretty much rise, get hurt, rise, playoffs. I get it. But CJ Stroud, to me, like I said last week, there's only 4 quarterbacks that I think are top of the mountain, like top-notch quarterbacks that if you go after them early, I think they really pay out. And that is CJ Stroud, Patrick Mahomes, Jordan Love, and Justin Herbert. Herbert's got something weird going on right now, so I'm a little concerned about that plantar fasciitis. But looking at those other 3 quarterbacks, man, seeing Stroud, like, you can only make so many passes around your draft, and then you got to ask yourself, is any of these players going to score more touchdowns than CJ Stroud? And this is a guy that throws downfield like all the time. He is always looking 10 to 15 yards downfield at least. And he's got speed demons galore. Plus he's got Dalton Schultz, who's excellent. I really have a hard time passing on CJ Stroud. I think Stroud's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing more you can say about that guy. Like you said, I mean, Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Noah Brown, Robert Woods, John Mechie. Like, his backup wide receivers could literally be starters on some teams.
Yeah.
Like, it's almost insane. Like, they have riches everywhere. I mean, tight end's okay with Dalton Schultz. But, like, it's almost can't miss if he doesn't have like a MVP type season, which I know is a lot to say for the sophomore slump kind of deal, but like, man, what else can you ask for?
He was on pace for MVP before he got hurt.
Yeah.
And halfway through last season, he actually was the whole like NFL Rookie of the Year bet in whatever betting market, whatever betting platform you're on. it actually didn't exist because he was such a slam dunk favorite to win NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year. So he was that good. Even being injured, it was gone. It just didn't exist. So I really like the value that you get with CJ Stroud. I think the guy's insane, and even him being up there for MVP this year, I don't think is out of the question. And even like you laid out with the wide receivers, to me, that's a team that is kind of reminding me of like the Green Bay Packers. They have kind of identical builds, but they're in separate conferences. They have 5 wide receivers. They have good defenses. They have good running backs. They have high octane quarterbacks. To me, these teams are very, very similar. They might end up playing each other at the end of the season. Just saying.
That could be fun. Nice little shootout right there.
Yeah, it'd be a wild game.
Absolutely wild. Any more strings that you want to tie up, loose ends?
Yeah, I would think it is pretty interesting. I mean, like knowing. All right, so let's dig just a little bit deeper. So Joe Mixon is not officially with this team. So it looks like Joe Mixon has some kind of injury. Looks like it's in his calf, is what's going on right now. So that is giving Dameon Pierce more reps. Dameon is a very hard runner. He's like a hard running like Isaiah Pacheco plus Darren Sproles. That's what you got going on there with that team, with that guy. And then two guys that I kind of like. Man, Tank Dell at 53. That is a little expensive to me. I don't know if I can go that high on Tank Dell. But the other guy that I really like on the offense that I think is really good bang for the buck. He's kind of hard. I mean, he might not be the hardest to get in a 10-team league. If you go bigger, I think he is harder to get, and I think he is one of the best in the game. I think Dalton Schultz at 114. So basically round 12. I think this is, in my eyes, I think this is a top 5 tight end. I've always liked Dalton Schultz, even from Dallas before he got to the Texans. I think Dalton Schultz is just a dynamite tight end.
Wow.
Yeah.
Top 5?
Yeah, I could see that. I could absolutely see Dalton Schultz getting top 5 by season's end for sure.
It's a quad injury for Joe Mixon.
Okay.
It was earlier in training camp. He's actually not going to play in the preseason game.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, Joe Mixon's got a ton of miles on his tires. Like we said, he's had some really bad offensive lines in the past. So Joe Mixon getting some rest and letting Dameon Pierce get more of those reps, I think is totally the right way to go.
True story. I mean, the guy, he's basically set it and forget it. He's going to give you 1,000 yards no matter what.
Yep.
In this instance, there's going to be nobody in the box. I mean, what a lucky guy, right? I mean, even though Cincinnati didn't have an offensive line, I mean, Joe Burrow is just getting chewed up and spit out.
Yep.
Like all of those wide receivers, so you can't stack the box. And then you go to Houston, who just brought in every receiver that you could name.
Yeah.
And you can't stack the box. So it's
absolutely. Yeah, it's like really good deal there. And I mean, Mixon is really intriguing, actually, if you think about it. The other thing, too, that I like about Mixon on this team is that when he was 2 years ago with the Bengals, he was getting a little bit of pressure from Giovanni Bernard to the point that Joe Mixon all of a sudden became this like fantastic pass catcher. Like now it's kind of odd. He's only it's very weird seeing him projected for only 1 receiving touchdown. I had a game with Joe Mixon 2 years ago. He caught 3 in a game. Like he just went insane. I think that was his 50-point game where he had 3 receiving and 2 rushing. Joe Mixon can catch a football.
That's because the Texans are 28th in the league in attempts to the running backs.
That's fair. That's totally fair. Maybe CJ Stroud isn't. Well, yeah, obviously CJ Stroud isn't as into that as Joe Burrow was for sure. But that might be that next evolution of CJ Stroud's game, is figuring out how to get those quick dump offs to a running back for 6 to 7 yards is totally worth it. Mixon now has that ability where he can play like a Josh Jacobs, play like a Saquon Barkley, even a Tyler Algier, or not Tyler Algier, Bijan Robinson kind of style like that. Even Rashad White. I think Mixon has that ability now and will have a chance to show it if they bring that into the offense.
Right. No one knows who Tyler Algier is. We definitely didn't say he was going to be the fantasy running back of the year last year. Nobody heard that ever.
I was there. I was waving that flag. I love Tyler Algier. I think if you draft Bijan, that's your ride or die, man. Those guys, you have to ride or die with both those guys. I love them. That's no debate.
That's how we end it. Just right there. It's no debate.
That's no debate. Perfect. Yep. So there you go, guys. That's our show. We got the AFC North, we got the AFC South done. Next week we are doing the AFC East and the AFC West. Same time, same place. I'm Steve Metrics. That's your boy,
DJ Triggs.
And together, that's no debate.
Boom.